Hey Wildcats! Monday, January 15th is a national holiday known as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Celebrated on every third Monday in January, this year it falls on Martin Luther King's birthday. Although we all know who Martin Luther King Jr. is, I wanted to take the time to talk about some of his most memorable moments on Earth. Martin Luther King was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. He attended Booker T. Washington High School, skipped both the 9th and 11th grades, and started college at the age of 15. From there, his activism and inspirational speeches played a major part in the fight for civil rights, such as the creation of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. King received a Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, as well as other honors. He was assassinated on April 4, 1968 by James Earl Ray. Martin Luther King would have been 89 years old on Monday and continues to be one of the most influential African American leaders to this day. Martin Luther King wrote 5 books and made over 450 speeches a year, but he is defined by only one of them.
I have a dream.
He delivered his I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington when 250,000 people gathered in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.
It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream.
This speech still remains strong today, and I caught up with some of our fellow classmates to find out what the speech means to them.
Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech is a really timeless message, and to me it symbolizes that no matter how much progress we've made, that we need to celebrate that, but also we can always work towards a better future to become more of an equal society.
Well, ever since I was little, I Have a Dream speech always was important because it was the first thing I learned about Black history. So it was really important for me to see, someone that looked like me in my little history segment when I was in elementary school. I felt empowered by his speech, and I felt beauty in liberation and in protesting. And what MLK stood for is he knew what he wanted to preach for was right, and so he had a lot of hope in his future, and I think that's beautiful. Though people went against him, and although people went against the movement, he still kept fighting. Everyone else still kept fighting, and I think that's really important to do.
His I Have a Dream speech became an everlasting spark for the fight for equality and still remains one of the most influential speeches of all time. So here's something I think is interesting. Martin Luther King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech in August of 1963. But on July 4th, 1965, he delivered his American Dream speech. Here's the interesting part. His American dream wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare.
But I must confess that that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Now, I'm not one to lose hope. I keep on hoping. I still have faith in the future. But I've had to analyze many things over the last few years, and I would say over the last few months. I think the other thing that we must see at this time is that many of the people who supported us in Selma and Birmingham were really outraged about the extremist behavior toward Negroes. But they were not at that moment, and they are not now, committed to genuine equality for Negroes. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income, for instance, to get rid of poverty for Negroes and all poor people. I think the other thing that we've got to see is that these young people are saying that there must be a revolution of values in our country, because some of the values that presently exist are certainly out of line with the values and the idealistic structure that brought our nation into being. Unfortunately, we haven't been true to these ideals and many of the values, and I've come to see that we have many more difficult days ahead, and some of the old optimism was a little superficial, and now it must be tempered with a solid realism. And I think the realistic fact is that we still have a long, long way to go. It seems to me that integration at its best is the opportunity to participate in the beauty of diversity.
Although no one knew this at the time, Martin Luther King delivered his last speech on April 3rd, 1968. The speech was entitled Mountaintop and perfectly summed up everything King was trying to accomplish.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Reverend Samuel Billy Kiles, who was sitting just a few feet away from King when he delivered the speech, said afterwards, "We're not going to get to the place where we can say Dr. King's dream has been realized. Now we can go to the beach. That's not going to happen. Much of it has been realized, but there is so much to do. But each generation will have its portion, and that helps to keep the dream alive." Martin Luther King's practices got us further into giving civil rights for all, but the fight for equality is still happening today. So please take the time to enjoy the King holiday and your day off school as we move one step forward. Signing out for Wildcat TV, I'm Gherkin.